June 6, 1944, 14:30 p.m. Normandy, 3 kilometers inland from Juno Beach. Obergefreiter Klaus Hoffmann scans the hedgerow through his Panthers cupola. 2 years on the Eastern Front taught him the only rule that matters: spot the threat before it kills you. Watch for rocket smoke. Track the muzzle flash. Suppress instantly. This doctrine kept him alive through Kursk, through 100 ambushes, through nightmares that would break lesser men. Today, it fails completely. A sound, dull, flat, directionless, like a door closing in an empty house. Hoffmann's mind processes this wrong. Not a weapon. Can't be. No flash, no trail, no smoke signature. Then his world ends. Molten copper punches through the side armor at 7,000 meters per second. The interior becomes an oven. His gunner opens his mouth to scream, lungs already seared. No sound emerges, just smoke. 3 seconds. The crew doesn't burn to death, they cook. 200 meters east, another Panther commander watches Hoffmann's tank erupt. He traverses frantically, searching for the firing position. Standard procedure: find the flash, kill the shooter. Nothing. The hedgerow is empty, silent, mocking him. Another flat thud, meaningless, impossible to locate. His tank dies the same way. Sudden, invisible, absolute. By nightfall, 14 Panthers burn across this single kilometer of French countryside. 14 crews dead. Not one of them saw what killed them. German after-action reports struggle with the language: enemy employing unknown silent anti-tank system. No visual signature detected. Crews report hearing impact before detecting launch. Impossible by known doctrine. The weapon responsible weighs 32 pounds. Built with a spring mechanism crude enough to embarrass a Victorian engineer. So unreliable its own users call it the pig. So hated that Canadian infantry curse it in 3 languages. So invisible that it shatters 2 years of German Panzer survival training in 6 hours. This is the story of how a fundamentally broken weapon became the thing German tank crews feared most. Not because it was powerful, because they never saw it coming. When everything you know about survival stops working, when death becomes invisible, how do you fight what you cannot see? What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted and never sees death coming? In 1943, Allied infantry face a problem with no good solution. German armor owns the close-quarters battlefield. Completely. Absolutely. In Italy's shattered towns, Panthers hunt through rubble like predators. In Normandy's hedgerows, tigers control every intersection. In the flooded Dutch lowlands, assault guns turn narrow causeways into killing corridors. Panzer crews are trained to perfection. Their survival doctrine is elegant, proven lethal: spot the threat, visually suppress, instantly kill before the second shot. Track the rocket smoke trail, mark the muzzle flash, traverse the gun, fire. Against the American M1A1 bazooka, this works flawlessly. The bazooka is a good weapon, effective, portable, reliable enough. American engineers are proud of it. It's also a death sentence. Every 236-inch rocket leaves a smoke trail 20 meters long, visible from half a kilometer away. The backblast throws up a dust cloud that hangs in the air like a flag, marking the shooter's position. The launch flash lights up the firing position like a camera bulb in a dark room. German machine gunners don't need to aim carefully. They just hose down the signature with MG42 fire, 200 rounds per minute, turning cover into splinters. Tank commanders don't waste time calculating range. They just put a high explosive shell into the obvious source. Ortona, Italy, December 1943. Canadian infantry advance through the medieval townhouse by house, room by room. The Germans defend every staircase, every doorway. Progress is measured in meters per day, bodies per building. A bazooka team sets up in a second-floor window. Good position. Clear shot at a Panther 60 meters down the street. They fire. Direct hit. The tank shudders but doesn't die. The rocket strikes the thick frontal armor at a bad angle. The backblast fills the room with smoke and dust. 3 seconds later, the Panthers' coaxial machine gun tears through the window frame. The 75mm main gun follows high explosive. The entire room disintegrates. The bazooka team dies without getting a second shot. This exchange happens 47 times in Ortona alone. 47 teams. 47 kills, but at a cost of 112 men dead or wounded. The math is brutal, unsustainable, unacceptable. Infantry morale fractures. Men see the bazooka as a suicide weapon. Officers can't order them to carry it, not honestly, not while looking them in the eye. Unit commanders send desperate reports back. Current anti-tank doctrine results in unacceptable casualties. Infantry cannot survive close engagement with armor using available weapons. Require alternative solution immediately. The British send the Piat. Projector infantry anti-tank. A weapon so crude it looks like a reject from a Victorian-era arms factory. It weighs 32 pounds heavier than 2 rifles, more awkward than a machine gun. Cocking it requires compressing a massive spring with 200 pounds of force. Men attempt it and collapse. Shoulders dislocate, ribs crack. Strong soldiers need help from a partner just to ready the weapon for firing. It misfires in mud, which covers every battlefield. It jams in cold, which defines European winters. It fails in rain, which falls constantly. Maximum effective range 100 yards. Point-blank range in tank warfare. Canadian troops take one look at it and react with everything from laughter to rage. You want us to carry this piece of junk? This thing will kill us before it kills a tank. I'd rather throw rocks. German intelligence officers examine captured Piats and file reports dismissing it as inferior British improvisation, operationally insignificant. Wehrmacht tactical manuals don't even mention it. Why would they? It's clearly a desperate stopgap, a weapon of last resort that no serious army would rely on. But the Piat has one feature, one single characteristic that changes everything. When it fires, nothing happens. No rocket motor igniting, no backblast cloud, no muzzle flash lighting up the darkness. No smoke trail drawing a line back to the shooter. Just a dull, flat sound, directionless, impossible to locate. The bomb simply appears in flight, already halfway to the target before anyone realizes a shot was fired. The shooter remains invisible, undetectable, impossible to suppress. And in urban warfare, in hedgerows, in the close quarters hell, where infantry die by the hundreds, invisibility isn't just an advantage. It's survival. The Canadians don't want to use it. They hate carrying it. They curse it constantly. But they're dying with the bazooka. So they try the Piat. And something changes. German tanks that should advance, hesitate. Crews that should press the attack, withdraw. Reports that should describe tactical victories instead describe confusion, panic, invisible threats. The weapon is terrible, but the fear it creates is real. And sometimes terror is more powerful than steel. Ortona, Italy, December 1943. Corporal Jean Dubois drags a Piat up a collapsed staircase. 32 pounds feels like 90 after 3 days without sleep. Family photos still hang on the walls, frozen faces watching him struggle. 3rd floor window. He sets the weapon down, hands shaking. Now comes the part they both dread. Cocking it. Dubois plants his feet. Mackenzie braces from behind. Together they pull against 200 pounds of spring resistance. Dubois' face goes purple. Something in his shoulder makes a wet popping sound. Mackenzie whispers through clenched teeth, "Come on, you bastard!" Click. The mechanism locks. Dubois collapses vision, blurred, tasting copper. Below, a Panzer IV grinds into the intersection. 50 meters. Dubois loads with trembling hands, aims, fires, no flash, no smoke, nothing. The bomb arcs lazily and drops onto the engine deck. The explosion is instantaneous. The crew bails out, firing wildly at building shadows, ghosts. They never look at the right window. Dubois and Mackenzie move immediately 3 rooms over 90 seconds to reload, hoping the Germans don't locate them. Another Panzer enters. Dubois fires again. Another crew abandoning a functional tank, running confused, searching for an enemy they can't see. The pattern spreads through Ortona like infection. Normandy, France, June 7, 1944. The bocage 8 feet of earth and vegetation. Visibility 50 meters maximum. Lieutenant Harris watches an American bazooka team fire at a Panther. The rocket smoke trail is instant, a white line pointing directly at the shooters. The Panther's MG-42 opens up before the rocket even impacts. 1,200 rounds per minute shredding the hedgerow. The American team doesn't get a second shot. Harris turns to his Piat team. "Your turn." Private Bouchard moves into position deep inside the foliage. Fires. The bomb appears over the hedgerow like a grenade tossed from nowhere. Strikes the Panther's side. Punches through. The German commander bails out, screaming orders pointing at hedgerows, but there's nothing to shoot at. No smoke, no direction. The Panther's machine gun sprays the wrong hedgerow 200 meters away, wasting ammunition on empty vegetation while Bouchard repositions, disappears. A German radio intercept, engaged by invisible anti-tank positions, no launch signature detected, unable to locate source, request immediate artillery support. But when all suspected areas means every hedgerow in Normandy, artillery can't help. Harris hears the fear spreading in German radio chatter, sees it in how Panthers move, now cautious, hesitant firing at shadows. Tank speed drops by half. Fuel consumption doubles. Ammunition expenditure triples, all because they're fighting ghosts. The Scheldt Estuary, Belgium. October 1944. Sergeant William Chin lies in a flooded ditch, water to his chest, freezing rain turning everything to ice. 6 hours in this ditch, 2 men, 1 weapon, no support. A Panther appears through mist. 20 meters away. Chin can see the rivets on the armor, smell the diesel, hear the crew talking inside. That close. He tries cocking the Piat. The mechanism is caked with mud ice debris. Won't move. Private Zhao helps. Both men pulling, boots slipping underwater, arms shaking 15 meters. The spring suddenly releases locks. Chin's shoulder cracks. Dislocated. Pain blinds him. He loads one-handed, can't use his right arm. 10 meters. He fires. The bomb wobbles badly in the wind. Chin is certain it'll miss. It doesn't. Side armor penetration. The Panther lurches, stops smoke pouring out. Chin collapses into the water. Zhao vomits from exhaustion and fear. The German crew bails out weapons, ready, firing blindly into fog. They withdraw without ever knowing where death came from. Later, a medic tells Chin his shoulder is permanently damaged. He'll never lift his right arm above his head again. Chin's response, "Good. Let someone else have a turn in hell." Across the front, reports accumulate. Tank destroyed, no visual signature. Impact before launch detection, tactically impossible. Shukin. Invisible anti-tank teams causing disproportionate casualties. The fear shifts. It used to belong to the infantry trapped in the open, hunted by armor. Now it creeps into Panzer crews, men who survived Kursk, who considered themselves elite. They're afraid of a weapon they can't see, can't locate, can't fight. And when the hunter becomes the hunted, when every shadow might hide, silent death fear becomes the deadliest weapon on the battlefield. The Piat shouldn't work. Every engineer says the same thing: the design violates modern weapon principles at every level. But Canadian infantry only care about one question: does it kill tanks without killing us first? The answer is yes. Here's how: A massive spring compressed to its limit. When released, a hollow spigot rod punches forward with brutal force. A bomb sits on the rod's end, its tail contains a small charge. The spigot ignites this charge. The explosion pushes against the launcher itself, breaking the bomb free using Newton's third law. The bomb then flies unpowered, ballistic, silent. No rocket motor, no exhaust trail, no sound but wind. The shape charge warhead is simple physics made lethal 2.5 pounds of explosive wrapped around a copper cone. On impact, it compresses the copper into a molten jet moving 7,000 meters per second. Enough to penetrate 100 millimeters of armor, enough to kill a Panther from the side, enough to turn a crew compartment into a crematorium in 3 seconds. But the real advantage isn't penetration, it's invisibility. The bomb just appears already in flight, already committed, already too late to stop. Canadian teams exploit this with tactics the bazooka can never support. Caen, France, July 1944. Sergeant Paul Mercier sets up in a bombed-out bakery. A German MG-42 nest controls the intersection 50 meters away behind a 3-meter rubble barricade. Impossible to hit with direct fire. Mercier doesn't try direct fire. He aims at 45 degrees, lobbing the bomb like a mortar. He fires. The bomb arcs high, clears the barricade, drops vertically onto the machine gun position. The Germans never see it coming. Just the explosion, sudden and final. The position goes silent. Mercier repositions before German infantry respond. Different room, different angle. A Panther rolls up to investigate. The commander scans for the mortar team he assumes fired that shot. Mercier fires again, flat trajectory through a ground floor window. Side armor, 40 millimeters. The shape charge punches through. The tank brews up. German infantry scatter, firing at every window, every shadow. Mercier's team is already gone. Different building. Watching. Waiting. This is the new warfare: invisibility, patience, striking once and vanishing. Antwerp, Belgium, November 1944. Lieutenant Morrison has 2 PAT teams, one at each end of a narrow street, 50 meters apart. A Panther enters the kill zone cautiously. Morrison's first team fires from the north. The bomb misses by inches, detonating against cobblestones. The Panther reverses immediately, turret traversing north, searching. Morrison's second team fires from the south. No flash, no warning. The bomb strikes the thin rear armor. Penetration, ignition, catastrophic kill. The crew doesn't bail out, no time. German infantry flood the street, checking the north end first, the obvious threat. Both PAT teams withdraw through connected basements emerging 2 blocks away. The German after-action report: coordinated ambush by multiple invisible anti-tank positions employing unknown silent weapons. The genius isn't the weapon, it's the tactics it enables. Tactics the bazooka can never support because it announces every shot, betrays every position, kills every team that fires twice. The PAT allows patient, invisible, multi-layered ambushes where the enemy can't suppress what they can't see. German Panzer Doctrine: fractures. New orders. Do not advance without full infantry screens. Minimum 2 squads forward, 1 per flank. Probe all positions with machine gun fire before advancing. Crews refuse to enter narrow streets without reconnaissance artillery prep air support. One captured commander interrogated after abandoning a functional tank: "We could not see them. We could not hear them. We fired at everything, nothing. Then the bomb comes and my gunner is burning. How do you fight what you cannot see?" The interrogator has no answer, because you can't. PAT teams learn Panther vulnerabilities like surgeons learning anatomy: side armor, 40-50 millimeters. Penetrable under 70 meters. Engine deck unsloped, lightly armored, vulnerable to top attack. Turret ring, jam it and the main gun becomes useless. Track assemblies destroy one and the tank becomes immobile. Every shot becomes chess. Every angle calculated, every piece of rubble either cover or firing position. Panthers deploy infantry screens to spot shooters, but PAT teams fire from basements, through windows, from alleys so dark the shooters barely see. By the time infantry locates a position, the team has vanished. The psychological effect compounds daily. Panthers that should advance hesitate. Crews that should press withdraw. Veterans who survived 100 battles refuse orders without overwhelming support. The PAT doesn't just destroy tanks, It paralyzes men with a fear more crippling than wounds, dying without ever seeing what killed you. But every advantage demands payment, and the men carrying this invisible weapon are about to pay a price no amount of stealth can avoid. October 21st, 1944. 23:45 hours. Savio River, northern Italy. Private Ernest. Smoky. Smith crouches in a muddy roadside ditch, rain hammering his helmet like drum beats. He's 28 years old, a chronic troublemaker, demoted 3 times for insubordination, drunkenness, fighting with officers. The kind of soldier the Army tolerates but doesn't trust. Tonight he's alone on the riverbank with a Piat and a Thompson submachine gun. His unit, the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada, has pushed across the Savio River under cover of darkness. A desperate night assault. They've seized a fragile bridgehead on the far bank, 100 meters deep, 200 men. No armor support, no artillery within range. German counterattack is inevitable. Intelligence says a panzer company is forming up in the tree line. 5 tanks, maybe 6. Smith's orders are simple: hold the road. Stop anything that moves. Don't let the Germans reach the bridge. He watches the darkness, listens. The rain muffles everything. Engine sounds, voices, movement. Then the low, distinctive growl of diesel engines. A Panther emerges from the tree line like a ghost materializing from fog. Massive. 70 meters away. 60. 50. Standard infantry doctrine says retreat. Fall back. Call for support. Do not engage armor alone. Do not sacrifice yourself uselessly. Smith stays. He knows the statistics. In wet conditions, 1/3 of Piats misfire. The bomb might not eject cleanly. The spring might slip. The weapon could explode in his hands, kill him instantly. He cocks the Piat anyway, muscles screaming, rain filling his eyes, hands shaking from cold and adrenaline. 40 meters, 30, 20. He can see the tank commander in the cupola scanning with binoculars. Smith fires. The bomb wobbles through the rain trajectory unstable but strikes the Panther's left track assembly. The explosion tears through the drive sprocket. Metal shrieks. The track snaps, whips around the road wheels. The tank lurches violently, stops dead. The turret traverses left, searching desperately for the firing position. Smith is already moving, dropping the Piat, grabbing the Thompson. German infantry pour from the trees behind the tank. 2 squads, 30 men. They see Smith now silhouetted against the burning flares the Panther crew has launched. He stands in the middle of the road and opens fire. The Thompson hammers. 30-round magazine emptying in seconds. Germans drop. Others dive for cover. Smith's buddy, Private James Tennant, runs forward from the ditch with a Bren-like machine gun, trying to cover Smith's exposed flank. Tennant is hit, falls hard, wounded, bleeding, trying to crawl back. Smith doesn't retreat. He changes magazines, fires again, holds the road alone. Another Panther grinds forward through the chaos. 50 meters. Machine gun blazing. Tracers rip past Smith's head so close he feels the heat. He drops back into the ditch, grabs the Piat. His right shoulder is already bruised dark purple from the first shot's recoil. His hands shake uncontrollably. Rain streams into the weapon's mechanism, mud, water, debris clogging the spring housing. He forces his exhausted body through the cocking sequence one more time, every muscle fiber screaming, vision blurring with pain and fatigue. He fires anyway. No flash, no smoke, just that flat, directionless thud. The bomb arcs through the storm, connects center mass with the Panther's frontal armor, a difficult shot, low percentage, the kind you don't attempt unless you're desperate or insane. But the range is close. 20 meters. The shaped charge punches through the forward glacis plate at a 45-degree angle. Marginal penetration. Barely enough. The interior ignites. The Panther stops. Shudders. The crew bails out, dragging wounded men. The second tank reverses hard, throwing mud, disappearing back into the tree line. The German infantry withdraw. The road is clear. Smith drags Tennant back to Canadian lines, collapses into the mud, passes out. The next morning, officers find him unconscious in the ditch, still clutching the Piat, hypothermic, barely breathing. He wakes up 14 hours later in a field hospital. 6 months later, King George VI pins the Victoria Cross to his chest in a ceremony Smith tries to skip. But Smith never talks about the medal. When asked, he deflects, changes the subject. When asked about the Piat, though, he's honest. "It was a miserable piece of junk to carry," he says years later in his only recorded interview. "Heavy, unreliable, broke your shoulder every time you fired it." Pause. "But when you absolutely needed it to work, when there was no one else, nothing else, no other option, it worked." This is the Piat's deepest truth. Not elegant, not beloved, not even trusted, but present when everything else failed. Northwest Europe winter, 1944 or 45. The Piat becomes the defining close-quarters anti-tank weapon of Canadian infantry doctrine. Not by choice, by necessity, by the simple fact that it works when nothing else does. In the Rhineland, teams stalk Panthers through bombed-out industrial complexes, factories with collapsed walls, warehouses with shattered windows. The weapon's silence allows them to fire from within buildings, through ground floor windows, from behind heavy machinery, inside dark loading bays. A Panther rolls past a textile mill. The Piat fires from the second floor. No flash betrays the window. The bomb drops almost vertically onto the thin engine deck. The tank erupts. German crews begin refusing to enter industrial zones without full infantry screens on all sides, without aerial reconnaissance, without artillery pre-bombardment that levels every building in advance. One Panther commander writes in his personal diary, recovered after the war, "We do not fear the American Shermans. We do not fear the British artillery. We fear the invisible bombs that come from nowhere and leave us burning before we can even turn the turret." At the Hawkwald Forest, February 1945, a single Canadian Piat team holds a critical logging road for 4 hours during a German counterattack. They fire 11 times, 9 hits, 7 confirmed kills, 5 Panthers, 2 STUG assault guns. The Germans send 2 full companies of infantry, 200 men, to clear the position. A massive effort for one anti-tank team. They find the Piat abandoned in a ditch, jammed, covered in mud and ice, but no bodies, no blood, no evidence of the shooters. The Canadians had withdrawn after the weapon failed on the 12th shot. But the Germans don't know that. They assume the team is still there, still hidden, still waiting in the forest shadows with another weapon. The road remains closed for 2 full days. German armor refuses to advance. Infantry probe, cautiously expecting ambush at every tree line, all because of one jammed Piat left in a ditch. Groningen, Netherlands, April 1945. Urban combat reaches its apex. Streets become killing corridors. Every building a fortress. Every window a potential firing position. Piat teams operate from attic cellars, sewer grates. They fire at ranges so close the blast wave scorches their faces. 20 meters, 15, 10. One team sets up in a furniture store on the 3rd floor. A Panther rolls past on the street below. The team fires through the window, aiming almost straight down. The bomb punches through the turret roof. The tank stops. The crew bails out, machine gunning the entire city block. 17 buildings, 300 rounds of ammunition, every window shattered. They never find the firing position. The Canadian team had fired, dropped the Piat, and escaped through a back stairwell that connected to the adjacent building. They were 2 blocks away before the tank even stopped burning. By April 1945, German armor doctrine in urban environments is unrecognizable from 1943. Tanks refuse to advance without overwhelming infantry support on all sides. They fire preemptively at every window, every doorway, every shadow that could hide a threat. They waste thousands of rounds of ammunition suppressing positions that don't exist. And when a Piat bomb finally does arrive, silent, unexpected, lethal, the psychological impact is absolute and devastating. Crews abandon functional tanks and run. Officers report phantom anti-tank teams that appear and vanish. Morale collapses among veteran panzer units that once dominated battlefields. The Piat doesn't just destroy armor, it breaks the will of the men inside. In the mathematics of warfare, fear becomes as deadly as high explosives, and silence becomes the most terrifying sound of all. May 1945, Germany surrenders. Across the former battlefields of Northwest Europe, Canadian combat engineers catalog the wreckage. Hundreds of destroyed tanks, Panthers, Tigers, Stugs, Mark IVs, destroyed, abandoned, crippled, burned. Piat kills are nearly impossible to count accurately. No centralized records exist. No official tally was kept. The weapon leaves no forensic signature, no rocket fragments, no propellant residue, no distinctive damage pattern. But the evidence exists in captured German unit reports. Invisible anti-tank weapons. Silent ambushes from unknown positions. Unlocatable firing sources causing heavy armor casualties. The Piat teams themselves pay a brutal price for their invisible war. Canadian medical records from 1944 to 45 show distinctive injury patterns, dislocated shoulders, torn rotator cuffs, fractured ribs from the cocking mechanism, concussions from misfires and premature detonations, second-degree burns from faulty ignition systems. Some teams refuse to carry the weapon after experiencing their first catastrophic misfire, the bomb exploding in the tube or the spring mechanism shattering and driving shrapnel into the operator's face. Others become weapon specialists. True experts. They learn the Piat's temperament like a mechanic learns an engine, its moods, its quirks, when it will work and when it will fail. They learn to cock it efficiently despite the pain, to fire in impossible conditions, to coax performance from a mechanism that should never work under combat stress. Private Ernest. Smoky Smith survives the war, returns to Canada in 1946, works as a maintenance man for the rest of his life, refuses interview requests, avoids military parades and ceremonies whenever possible. When journalists track him down and ask about his Victoria Cross, Canada's highest military honor, he deflects. "I just did what needed doing," he says. "Anyone else would have done the same." When asked specifically about the Piat, his answer is different, more personal. "It was the worst weapon I ever carried in my life," he says quietly. "Heavy, unreliable, it hurt to use. I hated every minute I spent with that thing." Long pause. "And it was the weapon that saved my life when nothing else could." The weapon itself is officially retired from British and Canadian service in 1950, replaced by the American M20 Super Bazooka, later replaced by recoilless rifles, then by wire-guided anti-tank missiles. Most Piats are scrapped, melted down for steel, destroyed, forgotten. A few survive in museums, relics of a desperate time, curiosities that visitors walk past without understanding. But the idea survives. The core principle that absolute stealth, uncompromising invisibility can overcome massive technological disadvantage. That fear wielded by desperate men with crude weapons becomes a force as deadly as advanced engineering. The Piat vanishes from military arsenals, but its tactical lessons echo through every infantry anti-tank manual written in the decades that follow. The Piat's influence appears in unexpected places across post-war military development. In the 1950s, the American M67 recoilless rifle incorporates tactical lessons learned from Canadian Piat operations. The doctrine emphasizes rapid displacement after firing, minimal muzzle signature, capability for indirect fire over obstacles. In the 1960s, Soviet RPG-7 training manuals include shoot and scoot tactics refined and perfected by Canadian Piat teams during urban warfare in Ortona and Groningen. Fire once. Move immediately. Never fire twice from the same position. In the 1970s, development of wire-guided anti-tank missiles adopts the Piat's core operational principle: eliminate the shooter's visual signature completely. Deny the enemy any opportunity for effective counterfire. Modern infantry doctrine treats signature reduction as absolutely non-negotiable. Thermal camouflage systems, suppressed weapon platforms, fire-and-forget missile systems that allow the operator to take cover immediately after launch. All of them are intellectual descendants of a crude spring-powered gun that terrified Panzer crews by doing one thing with absolute perfection: killing without being seen. Military historians note a fundamental shift in how armies evaluate infantry weapons after 1945. Pre-Piat weapon effectiveness was measured primarily through maximum range armor penetration, depth, mechanical reliability under ideal conditions. Post-Piat effectiveness calculations include signature reduction operator survivability rates, psychological impact on enemy morale. The weapon itself becomes a historical curiosity. Military museums display it with informational plaques reading British Projector Infantry Anti-Tank or Emergency Stopgap Anti-Armor Weapon 1942-1950. Visitors walk past without stopping. The Piat lacks the visual appeal of sleek fighters or massive artillery pieces, but veterans remember differently. Canadian veterans, British infantry, Polish units that fought alongside them, they remember the sound, that flat, unremarkable thud that meant a tank was about to die. They remember watching German Panthers, the most feared armor on the battlefield, withdrawing from positions they should have held easily, retreating from invisible threats they couldn't locate or suppress. They remember intercepted German radio transmissions, voices tight with fear. We cannot see them, we cannot find them, we cannot stop them. The Piat proved a truth that military theorists had long suspected but never demonstrated so clearly. In the chaos of close-quarters urban and forest warfare, a fundamentally flawed weapon wielded by determined infantry could shatter technological superiority. Not through elegant design, not through superior engineering, through absolute uncompromising invisibility. The most dangerous weapon on any battlefield isn't the one you can see approaching, it's the one you never see at all. Somewhere in the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa, a Piat sits behind protective glass. Rusted, corroded, heavy, crude. The spring mechanism is frozen solid with age, the spigot rod pitted with corrosion, the metal dulled to a lifeless gray. Museum visitors walk past it without stopping. Their eyes are drawn instead to the gleaming Spitfires suspended from the ceiling, the polished Sherman tanks, the glass cases full of medals and uniforms. But if you stop, if you lean close to the glass, if you read the small identification plaque mounted beneath the weapon, you find a single handwritten line from Private Smith's unpublished memoir donated to the museum after his death. "We carried it because we had to. It worked because it had to. That was enough." In the brutal mathematics of industrial warfare, perfection is a luxury reserved for peacetime engineers. Survival demands improvisation, adaptation under impossible pressure, the willingness to trust a fundamentally flawed tool when nothing else remains and death is seconds away. The Piat didn't win World War II. It didn't turn the tide of any major campaign. It didn't appear in newsreels or propaganda films. It earned no dramatic headlines, but in the narrow, rubble-choked streets of Ortona, in the claustrophobic hedgerows of Normandy, in the freezing, flooded polders of the Scheldt, it gave exhausted infantrymen something irreplaceable: a chance. A weapon that didn't announce itself to the enemy, didn't betray its user with smoke and flash, didn't promise victory or glory or survival, only the opportunity to fight unseen, to strike once from the shadows, to vanish before the enemy could respond. History is written by those who survive to tell their stories, but history is shaped quietly, invisibly by the anonymous soldiers who never asked for recognition. The men who carried 32 pounds of crude spring steel up shattered staircases while their shoulders screamed in pain, who tore their rotator cuffs forcing the cocking mechanism down in freezing rain, who fired into the darkness and prayed the weapon wouldn't misfire and kill them. They didn't ask to be remembered. They asked only for a weapon that worked when they needed it most. And in the silence between the shot and the explosion, in that terrible moment of uncertainty before the shaped charge detonated, the Piat delivered. Amid the burned-out hulks of Panthers scattered across France and Germany and Italy, a simple mechanical spring rewrote the ancient equation between man and machine. History records the outcome of battles, but history is decided by moments. The moment a spring releases, a bomb arcs silently through rain, a tank dies without warning. The moment fear shifts from hunter to hunted. The moment invisibility becomes the greatest weapon of all. It is not perfection that changes battlefields, but the unseen resolve of those who fight in silence, asking nothing, enduring everything, holding the line when all seems lost. The archive holds 10,000 more stories like this one, weapons that shouldn't have worked, soldiers who shouldn't have survived, moments that changed everything. The past speaks if we choose to listen.